Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. We're live. I'm back now, myself, Cash, and I'm here with Jay Corman Kane, JC, and we're back to get back into this material that we're looking at. Today is going to get a little bit more interesting, although we're still dealing with some of the foundational material. Next week, it's even better. So today, we're going to go back and look into this material. We're looking today at the definite articles. Which are uniquely interesting in the Quran as a matter of how they combine and the different formats and a lot of juicy stuff like that. So, JC, how are you doing?
I'm actually very well. I'm excited to have reached the middle point in the original material that we were working on, and things are now going to get more and more interesting with every show. So, yes, halfway through. This is quite exciting. Are you excited as well?
Yes, yes, sir. I'm very excited.
Cool. So let me actually see. And you've already said today we're talking about the definite article, the Arabic one, of course.
As opposed to the Aramaic one.
Or maybe not.
We'll start without getting into that quite yet. We'll look at the English. So, just as a very simple baseline, what we're talking about here with the definite article is what we say in the English as the. Everyone knows this, the. This means it's not just a something, it is the something. So in the Arabic, most people know this, is the version of the definite article, in the Arabic is the al prefix. So it comes before the word, like with the English, and it serves the same function. It is the definite article, very simply. So wait, JC, don't we have more here? Right. So, for example, in the English, we would say the great throne. This is defining not just a particular great throne, but the great throne, the one unique ultimate great throne. In the Arabic, however, it's not just written as al and then the Arabic words for great throne. It's written as the throne, the great. It looks weird here because we're writing it in the English of what it would look like, but when you can see it here, it makes more sense. So what we have here highlighted in the red is the Aleph Lam. This is the combination of these two as the prefix to a word indicates the definite article. So this is why you would say, I forget what words we have exactly here, but you would say like Al-Aziz Al-Hakim. And this would be the Aziz, mighty. There's other translations for that. And Al-Hakim, wisdom, the wisdom, right? But if you put them together, they can combine. So we'll see that as well. But so just as a baseline, what we're dealing with here is how the al prefix in the Arabic functions, as opposed to how we're used to it as English speakers or non-English speakers, but non-Arabic speakers, because it's quite unique to the Arabic, because it's quite archaic form. We use just one definite article in most languages today. So, like the great throne.
And I would say, so in English, we would only ever have one definite article. So we know that we're talking about the throne, a specific throne, and you could add any adjectives that you like. You would say the great, expensive, luxurious, golden throne. So you would have the definite article once, then you will have throne, the noun, at the very, very end, and then you actually stack up all of the adjectives in the middle, unless you are actually trying to do something more poetic. But that would be the structure. In Arabic, you would actually have the definite article attached to each and every single one of those words. And the noun, like in many other languages, appears first. So you first introduce the noun, the throne, and then you stack up the adjectives, like in this case, the throne, the great.
Right, so it's the inverse of what we're used to. We would say the adjective first, the great throne. It's meant in the same way in the Arabic. It's just in a different order. It's grammar. Many people have this with different languages, right?
And actually, that thing on its own is not a problem at all. Every language would actually use definite articles in one manner or another. In Arabic, they have their own ways. The problem is, as you have probably seen, that with in the Quran we have these particular structures, which they actually feel a little bit weird, particularly when you translate them or when normal translators translate from Arabic into English. They don't go for the easy option. Like, for example, this one. It sounds rather clunky. We say he is Allah, the one, the irresistible, or the one, the prevailing, when it would make more sense to say the prevailing one or the irresistible one. In this case, it just feels weird, particularly when the translators, it is very clear they are not trying to really be very true to the Arabic. They're just trying to make things sound all right. So there is something going on in there. Maybe it is that they want us to actually get used to that structure. Maybe they want us to actually think about each and every single one of those words as the titles or the names of Allah. But it just feels weird when they are taking so many liberties in the translations, and then we get to something like this, and it seems to stick out like a sore thumb, which makes us think, is there something hidden behind the translations? Why would they not say the prevailing one as opposed to the one, the prevailing? And that is kind of like the theme today.
And there's some inconsistencies. So some translators, in other cases, not this case of Surah 39, Ayah 4, but in other instances, we have some translations who go for the combined word, and then others go for this other case. So with these cases where we have the definite article on two different words in the Arabic, the natural, sort of straightforward way of reading it is to combine them both into one word, where you have the first word is the subject, so the throne, or here in this case it would be the one, right? And the point is that then the second one would become a modifier to it. So we would see here, for example, in this lovely meme, we see the question is, what is it, the one, the prevailing, or the prevailing one? Well, the answer in the Arabic, supposedly, is that you can have two cases, and it is ambiguous. Just by the text alone, it's not actually identifiable whether it should be read as one single statement where you have a noun being modified by an adjective or a modifier of sorts, right? Or whether you're meant to read it as two separate standalone title/names for a single subject, in these cases being Allah. So it's not actually clear just with the text of the Arabic whether this is the what is said, that in old poetry it was common to have this structure, and it's a certain case like the appositive case or a prostrative case. I forget exactly the word. You can search it up very easily, but it's this particular grammatical rule where it could be either one. It could be read as the one, the prevailing, or, and the cat seems to be very confident here, and I would give him credit. I mean, the one, the prevailing, are you sure? It seems more likely to be the prevailing one, frankly. So we have this argument that the assertion is that it can go either way. Okay, fair enough.
And just like Kash said, they do take liberties sometimes. Like, for example, this is another example of different translators where they will actually break that pattern and they will translate this particular verse as the all-knowing judge or the knowing judge. When we get to Yusuf Ali, he actually sticks to the previous formula, which is, well, the one to decide, the judge, and then the one who knows. So they do have some liberty as to how they translate this. And as well, Kash, did you look actually at some other examples, and you said that they were picking and choosing quite a bit, different translators?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a very common thing. It seems like they can choose, but very often, and this is what is very bizarre, is they would go for the translation that actually makes no sense in English, which raises an eyebrow. And maybe the reason is, maybe there is a reason behind this. So we can have a look at things like this. So these are just some words that appear in the Quran. So we have the first one, the great throne. This is not this is one of the translations. In other places you will see as the noble throne, and Saint Murad translates not throne, but something else, right? Kash, what was it for from
He
Saint Murad?
translates as trellis, and trellis is a word that people aren't familiar with. It's Have you ever been to a vine garden? And in a vine garden, they have these structures which are lattices, where the vines grow on those structures. They're these very thin, I can't describe it that well, but there are these structures by which the vines grow on. And you can start having your head turn a little bit and say, okay, that's kind of Christian imagery there. We have the grapevine, the true vine, a structure that holds up the vine. It's very interesting. So that's just a point of note that Murad translates the word that we read here as throne. He translated it as trellis. So a little bit of a side topic, but interesting to know.
Yeah. For now, we will use this, yes, because it is very common in the normal translations, and most people, even those who have actually read Murad's translation, they will be familiar with seeing throne. So we use that as an example, but every translator actually uses something different, as in the normal ones, including noble throne. So, but this is actually what it looks like. So in English, if translated word for word, it would be the throne, the great, as we've seen before. And then there are others. So we have Al-Quran, Al-Hakim, and we have the wise Quran. So, all right, so the same thing. This could have been something maybe a little bit different. Now, we have this Al Hakim again when he's talking about the Kitab. So, okay, the wise book. But when we get to Allah, instead of saying, in this case, the wise Aziz, or you can actually, the wise dear or dearest or whatever you want to translate it, it just changes. They become the names of Allah, even though they are identical used in other examples. And in other examples, they will say, you see, it's in the final position. It is therefore an adjective to the previous noun. When it comes to Allah, no, they are independent. And then we've seen the other examples, like that one with the judge, which the translators pick and choose how you are going to see these translations.
Right. So in this case, like you said, it's the same exact word and it should be rendered the same, but because there is this tendency for translators to go, for whatever reason, with this impulse to translate it in this cut up case, where they treat each word as a separate name, divine name for God. They don't merge them. So they don't translate it as they translate the wise Quran. They don't say, for example, the Quran, the wise, because then it would be like, what? That's kind of weird, right? So this formula appears predominantly, vast majority, with these ending cases, which we have not yet put together a perfect category name to them. I was thinking Allahian declarations as a title, but it's not so good. It doesn't roll off the tongue. But there are these formats, and in those formats, at the end of verses, where we see this case, like with Al-Aziz Al-Hakim, where we get the Almighty, the All-Wise, like you were saying about how it could be the wise dear or whatnot. I go for, in my mind, the wise beloved, and we all know who that is. But yeah, so another interesting point here to note for the two cases here of the wise Quran and the wise book, there's something off about using wise as an adjective for a text, a recitation, a book, or whatever it may be. The reason why is because wisdom is knowledge plus ethics plus experience. It's this kind of strange construct that we have of a word called wisdom. However, the foundation is that this is only something that an agent, a rational mind, can possess. Because a book can be containing knowledge, it can be potentially even containing wisdom, because it's a human who is wise, who puts words together that are then on the Quran or on a text or whatnot. But for a inanimate object or an inanimate sequence of scriptural characters that make up a text and then make up a book, for that itself to possess wisdom or to be itself wise, that is wrong. There's something off there.
Yes, we certainly have normalized it, and then you can actually say that a book is wise or intelligent. But when you are thinking about a book that says about itself to be very precise and it needs no interpretations, and then an adjective is used for it, which it is an adjective that it is used on people, and Quran is most certainly definitely not a persona. So interesting. It's just They didn't really translate it as the Quran, the wise. Otherwise, people would say, what are you talking about? And they just go with the wise Quran. Just an interesting note. Perhaps it should read the Quran, the wise. Maybe the Almighty, the wise. It should be read the wise, dear, like you said, and so on, beloved, rather.
The wise beloved,
So
exactly.
this is a little exercise that we actually did, and we will give a quick disclaimer in a minute. So the Quran has lots of words ending with a word that they end with those forms that we have seen, like the one, the prevailing, or the great throne, and so on, with two words at the very end of the surah, and they are of the verse, and they are both with definite articles. So we have used AI to analyze them. So from the ones that come in the first position, in the penultimate position, in the example of Al-Aziz, Al-Hakim, it will be Aziz, the first one of the two. In the noun position, AI returned that the majority of them, they happen to be nouns, as in exclusive nouns. They could never be in the final position, which is a bit odd, but we would expect something similar when we look at the final word in those combos. And when we look at those, what we got, and there you have the full list, is that the majority of them, they are also adjectives. So the distribution doesn't seem to be even. You don't get like Al-Hakim, Al-Aziz, or these sort of things. If we are dealing with two names of Allah, they should always be very much in any position. But when it's almost as if the penultimate position was more often than not, perhaps in every single case, supposed to be taken as a noun. And the ones in the final position, they should be taken as adjectives to that noun, including the names of Allah. That actually happens like throughout the book quite a bit. There are some cases, or quite a few cases, which they are like up for discussion. For example, if you have a word like high, high is an adjective. But if you say the most high, you immediately understand that it's an adjective, that it is very widely used as a noun for God. The Jews use it, the Christians use it, it's normal. But the word itself is an adjective. So this would need to really be, it would need to be analyzed by someone who speaks the language, the ancient language as well, and to look at them one by one. For now, we have used AI and we have double checked with AI with then different results, but directionally correct. Like the ones in the penultimate position, they are for the most part exclusive nouns, so they could not be in the final position because it would look very, very weird. Or rather, if they were in the final position, you know it's a name of Allah, you know it's a noun. But when we look at the final position, like the overwhelming majority of those, they are not exclusive nouns. So you make of that as you will. If anybody actually watching, if you speak the language, if you are interested in doing this sort of research, feel free to get all of these words that you will have them on the screen, or just contact us like through X or something, and we can send you the full list, or you can just do that yourself. We will check this again and again using Murat's translation and then looking at the English words that he used only, and see what patterns we look. But for now, it looks like that the results are directionally correct. The previous word is always more often than not a noun, and the one at the back could be anything. So it is more
Right.
likely that they are supposed to be adjectives to the noun.
So, to build on what you're saying, right, to make it clear, what we would expect if this was simply both meant to be standalone titles that are for God. For some reason, they're always in pairs, even though Allah is one. But if we were to expect that they're just both in the structure meant as standalone titles, then what we would expect is a normal distribution of the amount of noun exclusive or adjective exclusive or both variable. We would expect a normal distribution, or at least close to that, between the penultimate, the second last, and the last one. What we would expect is, whatever percentage distribution is consistent across both. But what we're seeing, and again, the caveat here is this is not totally robustly checked, but it appears to be at least directionally correct, that there is not a normal distribution among the two. There is a 96, I think you put 97% of the ones in the second last position are exclusively nouns. Again, like we said with the caveat, this could not be entirely perfectly correct, but at least directionally correct. That there seems to be a pattern here, which would correspond properly with what we've seen elsewhere, where this pattern is rendered as a dual modified construction of a greater title, like the great throne, rather than the throne, the great. So it appears that because of this pattern we've identified, that the way it should be read, pretty much always, right, is as dual constructions. They should be read in accordance with the standard grammatical rendering of this format of a double definite article title. So therefore, this is simply to say that we have clues or reason to believe that there's something off here about the way that these Allahian declarations, I'm calling them still for now, that there is something fishy here.
That they should be really read to be more correct or more truthful to the initial intended meaning as the great throne, as opposed to the throne the great, which it doesn't happen. But then when we get to the one, the prevailing, it should really be rendered as the prevailing one, and so on. And we will see other examples. That would be more likely to be the correct rendering. And if they haven't done it, maybe there is more to that story, as we're actually going to see. Ooh, Bismillah.
Aha, Bismillah al-Rahman al-Rahim. So yeah, in the Bismillah, this is an example of such a case where we have this Allahian declaration. I'm going to keep calling it that until it becomes a thing, where we have the definite article twice. And like with all the other ones where we're told, no, we have to read them as separate standalone names, what we're told is, okay, so these are two different names, two of many, but, they're in the Bismillah, they're potentially the two best ones or whatnot, right? So here we have Bismillah al-Rahman. So we see again, we have the highlights here over the al on the right side in front of Rahman, and then al on the left side here in front of Rahim. So this is traditionally understood to be two separate but equal names of Allah. Okay, fair enough. But the thing is here.
I'll just actually jump in for a second. We know that this is supposed to be read Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, but we will say Al-Rahman, Al-Rahim, pronouncing the Alif Lam very clearly, because people listening, they will probably not actually speak Arabic. So that's not how it is pronounced in the Arabic. The Lam doesn't get pronounced. We know that, but we are going to pronounce it, make it very, very clear that we are pronouncing that definite article, because most people watching, they will not speak Arabic. So I just wanted to make that clear. Sorry, Kash, you can carry on.
Right, it's the same with Surah An-Nisa, where they have the AN instead of the AL in pronunciation, right? But yeah, we're making it just clear that way an English-speaking audience is familiar. And to put some foundation here, we've went through before about the Aramaic origins, the Syro-Aramaic origins of the Quranic text. And so to build upon that, the definite article, we looked at it in the English being the, and in the Arabic being al. But now to build further on that, the Aramaic, so also the Syriac being a dialect of Aramaic, the way that they put their definite articles is quite unique for English speakers, because we have the in front. What they do in the Aramaic is that they have the definite article as the suffix. That is to say, instead of saying al-Rahman, or again, ar-Rahman, fine, they would put Rahmana or Rahmanan, because the definite article, the aleph at the end of a word indicates the an sound added to the end of the word. That's how it works in the Arabic today, right? So, but the point here is to illustrate is that this from the top line here to the pre-da, meaning definite article, this is how, hypothetically, the text would have originally have been in the Aramaic language, not necessarily the Aramaic script. The Arabic script looking like this, because it would have potentially been the Syriac script or whatnot. But these definite article cases would have originally actually been a ending aleph suffix rather than the alif lam prefix.
We could have used here the Aramaic script, but then it confuses matters. So we kept it in the Arabic script. We know it's not supposed to be, but just to actually show the point of you see actually the words and see what happens with the definite article, how it would have been in the earlier form before it becomes Arabic. But yeah, we could have done it with the Aramaic script and it would have been all a mess. So hopefully this helps show clearly what the process would have looked like.
I mean, most people who are looking into the Quranic stuff right now, they barely can read Arabic. We don't want to overcomplicate that by now having everyone need to read Syriac script as well. It's unnecessary. Okay. Right, and what we'll see later here is also that we're doing this intentionally. That way, we also see that this form that we're seeing now with the pre-definite article hypothetical here, right, is actually something that we then see later itself in the Rasam of the Quranic text in the Hafs and also in many others, right? So we'll see that in a second, right? But the point here is that it's just important to know, because of how we've set the foundation that the Quranic text was originally an Aramaic textual tradition, that the way that you would transition grammatically from Aramaic to the Arabic language is to replace the ending Aleph, the suffix Aleph, with the prefix definite article in the Arabic of Aleph Lam. That's important to know. That's basically it.
Which then also means that the definite articles, the Arabic definite articles in the Quran, they would all have been well inserted. They had to be created. Assuming that the full Quran was first Aramaic, it could have been that some sections could have been Arabic or maybe even other languages. Based on what we have seen so far, at least to me, it looks like it was the whole thing was in Aramaic, perhaps in different dialects, but Aramaic nonetheless. I haven't come across any section that I could say, oh, look, this was Arabic from the 7th century. It looks like it was Aramaic. We just put that caveat in case that there are any sections in there which they were just written in Arabic to begin with. Those, of course, they would have just written what they wanted. But otherwise, the majority of the work would have been in Aramaic, either spoken or written. And the step of Arabizing that script, it would certainly have required them to remove the ending Aleph from the Aramaic and then add the Alif Lam in the Arabic. So all, or pretty much the majority, if not all, of the definite articles in the Quran were added late because they must have. And we see how that creates quite a few problems. We'll talk about a couple of them in a minute, but hopefully that is kind of like clear. The definite articles would have to be added late because they were not there in the original script.
Right. Here's a cool. Oh, sorry, you go ahead, JC.
No, just this slide that we decided to just put here, so for people to see, because it's the one place in the Quran that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's just very unique. There are 8 different names of Allah. In there, you have the translations as per Murad, and it's unusual. You obviously don't have that everywhere. Normally, you have combos of 2 words, and now that we have seen normally you have the noun first and then the adjective, and it seems to be the case. When we look at these combos, we have to reconsider whether it was always meant to be read in this manner, like 8 different nouns, or if this is actually combos. We do have a precedent even in the Bible where we have 8 words right there from Isaiah 9:6, where we will have wonderful counselor, mighty God, everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So we have 8 words, combos of a noun and an adjective. And then we come here to the Quran and we happen to have as well 8 words, and they seem to just be disjointed, as in each and every single one of them is independent. What is it possible that this has been done on purpose? And perhaps the king is the only noun, everything else are adjectives to that king? Or is it combos of 2? Did the translators don't want us to read the continuously holy king as an option associated to Allah, because people would say, hang on a minute, that sounds like someone else I know. Is it different combos? So we wanted to show this, to put it out there, to say maybe this is not read in this manner as 8 different titles, but it is something else. What do you think? Are you able to unpick it from the Arabic to know exactly what the author originally intended? Yep, Kash, do you agree with that?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, so I definitely agree. I think what's very interesting about this case is simply the formula. It has the same formula effectively as Isaiah 9:6. Linguistically, like there's a case that's a bit complicated here, but the fact that we have effectively 8 different words that form 4 titles as pairs of 2 in Isaiah 9:6 here, that we see something similar in Surah 59. It's quite interesting, but it becomes a bit difficult to combine them as pairs of 2, right? Because if you say, okay, the Holy King makes total sense, Al Malik Al Qudus totally makes sense, but then the peace, the believer, would be strange. What, the believing peace? Oh, weird. The hegemonic, the deer hegemon. It doesn't work, right? But again, this is taking the most authentic and reliable translation we have, which is the Murad, Saint Murad's translation. But even that is not quite enough to really get the full picture, because we're still assuming at this point, when taking the Murad, that we are dealing with an Arabic original textual tradition, but we are not. Like we've said before, what we're dealing with here is an eventual Arabic textual tradition that found its origins in a Syro-Aramaic textual tradition. So potentially, and this would be an analysis that I could also do, I just haven't done it yet, and we would implore anyone in the audience to do it themselves. But this is an analysis that anyone can do. You just take this verse in question, you look at all of the different roots of the Arabic words here, consonantally, with also considerations potentially for diacritical misapplications. That means that a nun could be a ba and things like this, right? And you look at all the roots and you try to figure out, okay, maybe this meant this meant this, and you do a robust analysis using large language models and doing a root analysis where you then look at that root's meaning across the different Semitic languages. So you would look at the meaning of the Hebrew, look at the meaning of the Aramaic, and the Aramaic dialect of Syriac, then the Arabic, and then potentially even the Ethiopic to get a big picture. But yeah, so anyone can do this analysis and try to figure out, okay, what exactly are we dealing with here? Because the very sin narrative, the standard Islamic narrative explanation is no, it just means like 8 different standalone titles, and we're just padding the list from, I guess, 91 to 99, maybe, who knows. But yeah, so there's something off there. But let's not belabor the point too much.
And this is the example, Cash, that you looked at, and everybody seems to be translating it very freely in whichever way they like, as either the king, the truth, or the true king. I think Murat translates this as the true king, which would make sense. But the other translators, they really just played with it one way or another. To me, even if it said the king, the truth, I would think that it's quite revealing as to what he's talking about. And the true king would actually make more sense even in the sentence. But in any case, there are the 2 options. Do you say this is the king and the truth, because those are Al-Malik and Al-Haq being 2 titles of for God, or is it just talking about the true king? Which one is it?
Right.
And then the interesting bit. So we have seen a few things before, and with the definite articles. But what happens when the Quran doesn't actually say or use the definite articles? And there are lots of examples. So, for example, these ones here are going to be only about Surah 2. There are plenty. So we have those words in there in the Arabic, Surah 2, verse 115. Daif International says, Allah is all-encompassing and knowing. Murad translated as Allah is capacious, knowledgeable. It's like, all right, fair enough. Then we have other ones like that one. I'll just read Murad's. Allah is thankful, knowledgeable. Okay. And that one. Allah is dear, wise. And one last one. Allah is hearer, knowledgeable. So you can see the, well, I say Sahih International because you shouldn't actually say Sahih when it's not. And then we have a couple of problems with this. First of all, you will notice that all of the words in the Arabic, they don't have the definite article. That's why it's an indefinite article. The absence of the definite article is indefinite. But they also don't end with an aleph. So it's possible that it got removed from the original Aramaic and they didn't add it in the Arabic when they should have. Maybe it was not there to begin with. We don't know. We're just putting that these ones, they don't have a definite article at all. But we have some problems with the translation. We have in all of these verses, when they translated, most people, they would add the and. But there is no wa in those verses at all. With Murad, he doesn't add an and it isn't there. So he gets that absolutely right. Now, this will be a question more for Arabic speakers who are not Muslims, of course, because otherwise we know the answer. I would assume that all of these verses would make more sense if they didn't have the and, but all of those words had the definite article. So you are talking about, well, the true king or the whatever it may be, or the prevailing one. So you don't need the definite article. You have these two titles, the one, the prevailing. But when you are saying that Allah is encompassing and now and knowing, you really need the and in English. In Arabic, can you get away without the and, or is it actually a requirement? And is this mistranslation just in order to make it sense? So that would be a question for Arabic speakers who are not Muslims, because otherwise we know what they're going to say.
Well, we can
And
ask Murad, right? Because we have the Murad translation. Murad does not put it as capacious and knowledgeable as some sort of hidden rule that you can, quote unquote, get away with not putting the grammatically required wa there. If what you really want to mean is all encompassing and knowing.
yeah, also with the indefinite here, then it's just a bit bizarre because when you say, so God is almighty or say all knowledgeable, it's like, okay, that's great, so all knowledgeable. But if you don't have the definite article, or rather, if you say he is the knowledgeable, because that is what would say in the Arabic, you would say, okay, so he is the knowledgeable. The moment that you remove the definite article, now you're saying that Allah is knowledgeable. But lots of people are knowledgeable. So all of a sudden, it's not his name. You are just really downgrading him by a lot. And the only reason that he's downgraded in that manner is that there is no definite article. It just feels like something is missing in there. And if the translators or the ones who created this to begin with were to be very consistent, all of these words would be the names of God, and it would have all of them definite articles. And the fact that it seems to be a bit hit and miss is that there is a problem with that. And it tells us maybe something to do with the time when these things were translated. But we have to do more analysis on that. So these ones here, they don't have the definite article. They don't have the Aleph at the end, but then we have quite a few that do have the definite article. In fact, Surah 4 is very loaded with structures like this, where you have this sequence, which is talking about Allah, and it ends not just with the words like before, like the ones that we had in the previous screen were all ending in mim, in the M. These ones end with the Aleph. And we have a whole bunch, actually, very, very heavy loaded in this Surah 4. So, oops. So we can do a similar analysis.
And JC,
First, we have, yep.
they don't have the definite article, but they do. It's just written in Aramaic.
That is the case we are putting forward. The thing is, in Arabic, this is an actual form. It's not like, oh, there is a mistake. They shouldn't have the alifs. It's like it makes something, it makes sense to have the alif. It is a form in Arabic. But what we are saying is, it would make more sense if it is, in fact, Aramaic, and they forgot to remove the definite article from the Aramaic and add the Arabic one. So
Or
we're looking at an actual Arabic word, but we are thinking we're actually, in fact, looking at an Aramaic version of an Aramaic word, or an Arabic version of an Aramaic word with the Aramaic definite article.
Right.
Did I
Maybe
explain that well
they
at all?
forgot.
Probably not.
It wasn't that they forgot necessarily. I mean, the argument I'm going to put forward in a second is that what we're dealing with here is uh, three or maybe more different moments at which the textual tradition in a certain form made its way into the compilation. So, for example, if you had an already transcribed into the Arabic script form text, and then you had another text that was in the Syriac, then the one that you want to now put from the Syriac into the Arabic, now you can do the whole process of removing the definite article in the Aramaic, which is the ending suffix, and add the al or just the lam initially and wait for Hajjaj to add the aleph later. So that's feasible. But if you already have in the Aramaic script, it's a different story. So there seems to be at least three different inception points at which a particular state of text made its way into the compilation.
Yeah, and actually I haven't checked, but I think that Microsoft Word was not around in the 7th century. So it would have been difficult for them to say, oh, I made a mistake here. Let me remove this and edit it. Back in the day, if you wrote something, it actually stayed written for a really long time. You couldn't just remove it unless you have something like in the Sana palimpsest. But still, the expensive materials, which are the ones that last, they will be the ones that once you write it, it's like that. If in the very first instance they were meant to remove the definite articles and add the Arabic ones, and they didn't because it is a perfectly viable Arabic word anyway, if they kept it like this, then they were pretty much stuck the moment that the book was actually circulating around. You cannot actually recall everything. You would have, that boat would have sailed at that point.
In this case, like you're saying, these are valid grammatical constructions. The only difference here is that we're reading them as adjectives now, because they're ending with the aleph, so it ends with the an, and then it's applied as an adjective rather than a definite article name, right? So in these cases, we see Allah is ever knowing and wise as an adjective case, rather than Allah is the knowing, the wise, or the all knowing, the all wise. So that's what the change here between the ending aleph and the prefix al. That's what the change would mean.
Yeah, and when we look at, okay, how faithful have they been, even with the translation, without even tackling the definite articles? The definite articles, they are not there, and that's fair enough, and they were already stuck with that. But when we look at the translations, we have exactly the same problem we had with the previous words. The and is not there, but they added in the If International, and I think probably the others. For this one, I didn't check the other translators. There is pretty much no point. Murad, once again, he doesn't add the and because he's not there. But things become very complicated very, very quickly once again, because, well, we have this, Aleph, this is actually what we have discussed a moment ago, that these ending as Alephs are fine. They are okay in Arabic, they were okay in Aramaic, but could there have been just not translated into the Arabic, and that's the whole problem. But then this problem as well happens. So we have this word. Would you like to actually speak about this one, Kash?
So it's pronounced kana.
Mm.
There's some question about what it really means or whatnot, but the word itself, as is a Arabic word which means past tense to be. So in English, we would say was, which is why Murad properly translates kana as being was.
And we have all of these examples. Why would they translate them all in the present tense instead of the past tense? Now, the problem that I have with this is to I wouldn't have a problem if someone spoke about God in past tense or the present tense. Normally, that would be fine, particularly when you are dealing with a being which is meant to be eternal and all knowing and so on. But with the translations, I would actually take issue because why would they not translate what the book says? Muslims, they keep saying that their book is perfect and it is great and it comes from God. It's like, so why are the translators making such a mistake, like writing these words in the present instead of the past? There is no problem writing it present tense or past tense. Keep it in the past tense because that's what the text says. But they seem to really try to push something onto the audience. and they abandon what the book actually says to give you a different explanation. I think all of these things are probably to make sure that you don't realize that in one place you will have the same structure talking about Allah in the present tense or in a nominal sentence, and then in another one you have it in the past tense, and then having people ask you, "Oh, hang on a minute, why past tense? Is this that God was around at one point and it applies to back then, but now it's different?" So in order to remove those questions, they just mistranslate their sacred book. It's like, for goodness sake, keep it as it is and then answer questions when people ask them. But they are actually taking lots of liberties with the translations, particularly the tenses. We discussed that in a previous live stream. We're now discussing those once again, and we will show more things like that in the future. The tenses are particularly in the past tense quite a lot, but then they are translated in the present or the future. And this is another example. Why would you do that?
If it's the perfect word, the perfectly preserved ultimate, why is it that Mr. Daif International is trying to duct tape it? Why is he trying to fix the perfect word? It's a good question.
Yeah, and then we have another problem with this particular verse. What do you think about these words used here in Daif International compared to Murad?
It is interesting. It totally inverses who is the active and the passive elements here, right? So we see in Daif International, firstly, Allah is, where we see the X there. We've X'd it out because it actually is was, but we'll read the Daif. Allah is ever accepting of repentance. Okay, so he accepts the repentance. But in Murad, we read Allah, firstly, was, secondly, continuously repenting. So what? Allah was repenting? You can see why you'd have to, duct tape that one, right? Now it becomes accepting of repentance, but that's not in the Arabic. But it is now. Daif solved it. But yeah, it's very interesting, huh? Don't you think?
Yes, it is. Sorry, I'm actually trying to figure out something here in the background. So if you want to actually continue with this topic and explain a little bit more about the Aramaic and how it went from the definite articles in the Aramaic into the Arabic, that would be great, as I'm trying to figure something out. Or do you want me to actually show the other screen? You have actually shared something that you wanted to show the audience?
Sure, we can actually go through that now while you do your background stuff. Let's see
Okay,
how this
great. Let's
works.
actually.
We're doing this on the fly now because actually, while the stream was going good, it actually looks okay. So while the stream was actually going on, I sort of put this together real quick. The point of this is that I realized that we have certain Allahian declarations. I'm going to coin the phrase. So combinations of two titles. So in this case, we have the all-forgiving, most merciful. Okay, and that's, you see that in these three verses here. I chose these three because you see in Surah 10, 107 at the top, that's a case where you have the definite article. So you just look on the left side, because Arabic goes from right to left. Look at the left side at the end of that verse there, and you'll see the alif lam and then alif lam. So you see these words here. It's the same words that we see in Surah 4, 129, and same words as we see in Surah 2, ayah 173. But this one in 10, 107, it has the definite articles. In the one in Surah 4, and we've talked about how in Surah 4 there seems to be a preponderance of alif suffix cases, so the alif at the end of the word. So we see that it's actually the same word, or same combination even of words, where we have the last two in Surah 4 there, are the same words as the last two in Surah 10 there. But the difference is that one has the alif lam and the other one does not. It has the ending alif suffix, which would be the Aramaic form of the definite article. And then even further interestingly, we see that same combination in Surah 2, 173, at the end of the verse there. It's the same two words, but in this is the third form, where we don't have the alif lam definite article and we don't have the alif suffix, that meaning at the end of the word, but we have neither. They're just standalone. So this bears more investigation, as in the sense of, because we see in Surah 4 there, we have the ala kana, right? So kana there being was, which I'm sure if we read here on the Sahih International, I think this is actually This is Dr. Mustafa Khattab. And the second one here, you see that it's not rendered as was. We see there is. Surely Allah is. Kana means is. Trust me, Aki, I'm an Arabic doctor. Yeah, okay. Apparently, he doesn't know past and present tense. That's quite strange. But yeah, so this is just very interesting. We have the exact same Allahian declaration, albeit with different forms, where on the bottom we see indeed Allah and then the two words. And in Surah 10 at the top, we see he is. So it says wa huwa wa huwa. That would mean and he is. So and he is. And then we see the definite articles. And the second one we see kana, so Allah was, and then we see them with the adjective form, which is potentially relevant. And in the bottom we see again the same format of indeed he is. No, I was confusing myself. So anyway, we have different introductions, but we have the same divine names at the end, but three entirely different formats. Definite article, Aramaic definite article, which I'll say fine, that's the Arabic a suffix, fair enough, and then with neither, but yet the same divine words. Interesting. It bears investigation. And just while you're maybe also already done, but just to emphasize what you're saying before about Surah 4. Surah 4 has a vast preponderance of a suffix cases, where we have these Allahian declarations at the end of verses, and also it has a preponderance of the kana, which is mistranslated as is in the Sin translations, but it has a preponderance of these Allahian declarations that end with the suffix Aleph instead of the initial Aleph. So this is an investigation that needs to be done in terms of grouping which surahs have a tendency towards this form over that form and so on. But yeah, this is just to show you that there's something interesting going on here, and it bears more investigation. And we hope that anyone who's watching this actually does some of the legwork themselves and then reaches out to us and tells us what they find out.
Yeah, actually, I could add to that in case that anybody says, no, look, in Surah 4, the reason that everything ends with an Aleph is because of it rhymes. No, that's not how it works at all. The reason why they have to chant the Quran is so that it is palatable. It doesn't rhyme. It's not like you have it in English. In English, you have a rhyme, and it's all about the sounding of those letters. Read the Quran just normally, and you will see how it doesn't rhyme in the way that you would expect. That's why it has to be chanted. It's a whole different game. So the ending alephs in one way, in not ending in another place, is not because of that. There is more to that story, and because, like Kash said in Surah 4, I think there are 27 cases of this structure ending in alephs, and then 3 without it. And when you look at Surah 2, you have them pretty much without, I think the majority of them, and they seem to be in nominal sentences. Everything seems to be a little bit too all over the place. When Murad talks about how many authors the Quran would have had, he says very diplomatically, at least 2. I think that is incredibly generous. Most likely there will be more. There is as well the difference between how many writers it had and then how many translators that they actually borrowed all of these things and converted it into Arabic. But based on what we can see, we're seeing these patterns that seem to perhaps fit on a particular either a person, group, theology, and understanding these particular patterns will help particularly people who are interested in the history find out, okay, so these surahs were written first and in this manner, and this was the problem, and the definite articles is giving us a very good insight as to what happened, because otherwise you're reading all of these structures and you see that Allah goes from being the hearer, the knower, to he is hearer and he is knower, and it's like every single human is. So you shouldn't say that about Allah. So you see that problem. Of course, Muslims would simply dismiss that and says, no, it's just they're saying that he knows stuff, and it's like, yes, but you are normally saying that he's the one who knows everything, the knower, and then you downgrade it. So there's a problem there. Hopefully, people will be able to have a look at the definite articles and the places where they are not, and find some patterns that we have missed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, oh, hang on a minute, I can actually switch. Can I actually
Technical
switch this?
difficulties, bear with us.
Yeah, technical difficulty. Okay, fine. I had to actually remove the other one first.
Very
So
well.
I think that's the end of this presentation. We got to the definite article bits. This one is quite, say, speculative but interesting. There are quite a few things in there that don't make sense. And if we consider the whole Quran being Arabic, well, what is the point? That would be Arabic and that's that. But we think there is a very strong chance that that's not the case at all. And the reason why we have many of these forms with definite article and many without, it has to do with the way it was originally translated, and understanding that will give us an understanding of the steps that happen between having the book or the recitations at the very least in Aramaic to going into the Abbasid period, and they start adding diacritical marks, and then the Quran gets really canonized, like for certain. So that was definite articles, and the next time we're going to talk about Al-Rahman or Ar-Rahman. So we're going to tackle that one exclusively because it's a very unique word. It not only appears in the Bismillah, but it appears a lot in the Quran, and it has a very different pattern. So anyone watching who wants to do that beforehand and they want to have a look so that they can throw questions in the chat or anything of the sort, please go ahead. Otherwise, we will just go through all of the instances. Well, not all of them, there are too many, but the ones that are very revealing. And we're going to find out who this Ar-Rahman actually was.
Spoiler, it's someone you know.
And it's not Muhammad. No, actually, no, I wanted to actually call the next live stream Al-Rahman is Muhammad. I wanted to call it that. I think I've spoiled it now. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll probably do it anyway.
Wait, but
Anyway, so
what's the joke?
yep. What's the joke?
Yeah, like what's the joke about Al-Rahman being Muhammad? Oh, I know why. I know. Don't give it away. Never mind.
Okay, you just got the joke. That's fine. But fine. Anyway, so this has been it for today. Hopefully, you will have found a few things of interest, either with the mistranslations, the original definite articles, of course, in Aramaic, and how the Quran looks a little bit weird when we are having all of these places where you would expect to find a definite article next to a title for Allah, but instead of that, it's just a normal word which could apply to anyone. And let us know your thoughts. If you find any other patterns that we have missed or anything that will point us in the right direction, perhaps that verse that has 8 different titles for Allah, if you figure out what it should have said initially or how it should be read, please let us know, because we're very curious about getting to the bottom of all of these things, and we believe that the community can really help a lot. The more eyes we have on all of this, the better. And with that in mind, of course, make sure that you like, subscribe if you haven't already, share this with everyone that you know, friends, family, anybody else. And hopefully we have lots of people by the time that we get to the final episode of this series, which is going to be the big reveal, and people need to be up to speed with all of these problems to do with the Aramaic and the Arabic. So try to get as many people in. By the time that we get there, only 5 more sessions to go.
And those sessions are now okay. So now we've truly, you were saying initially we were at the middle point, but now we're really at the middle point, right? We're ending the 5th one, and now we've got 5 exactly left, right? And these 5, starting with Al-Rahman, will get extremely interesting, more and more so until the final big reveal, which will frankly blow your mind.
Great. So thank you very much, Andrew, for modding, by the way, and making sure that nobody gets out of hand. And thank you all for watching. We will see you on the next one, most likely in just a handful of days. So stay tuned and see you then.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.